This is my sketchbook. I've always wanted to be able to draw, so I'm going to practice every single day for the next year to see how much I can improve. I think it's time to move on to something a bit more fundamental to any drawing, and that is construction. And I'm basically going to use this thing to start the process of learning how to draw people.
Thomas James Woolley.
I think a good goal to work towards would be eventually to do a self-portrait of myself in my cap and gown. So now that you know some of my backstory, I'd like to introduce you to somebody.
It's a pain you can't describe if you've never had it. You've got to push yourself, in a way, to do things. Because if you sat back and just being miserable, you'd be miserable all your life. So it's not much point. So you just have to learn to get on with it.
Hello.
Hello,
What is your name and how old are you?
my name is Linda and I am 77.
And how are you related to me?
I'm your nanny.
This is the opening of a documentary I was working on back at uni in my second year. It was all about my nan. She has lived with rheumatoid arthritis for over 50 years, and despite that, has been able to raise a family and live a life full of achievement. I thought that was a brilliant story to tell. However, it was never finished. And as it stands, it never will be finished. Nanny Linda is currently in a care home and she is never coming out. The interview in the documentary was all finished, but a few days after filming it, the country locked down. This was in March 2020. I did manage to film some B-roll at home using an old 8mm projector, however, I needed to film things with her, but by the time restrictions lifted, I was just too busy, and before I knew it, my third year started and I just didn't have time. Then, she fell ill. She was in and out of hospital with pneumonia, to the point where she was in there for 8 weeks earlier this year with sepsis. Eventually she did come home for a few months, but she was bedridden. It's got to the point where she needs 24-hour care. I am never going to be able to finish filming her documentary, but there is something that I can do. With this. All that needs filming is the B-roll, which I've already drawn really terrible animatics for when I was submitting it for my uni assessment. I want to illustrate these properly. If I can't film what I want to with a camera, then I'll just have to draw it instead. This project, me drawing every single day and then documenting my progress, it's giving me the motivation to keep up the challenge. And hopefully one day, it will make me skilled enough to finish what I started back then. So that's another long-term goal. On top of drawing Charlie and doing my self-portrait, I want to be skilled enough to illustrate the B-roll for my nan's documentary that I'm never going to be able to actually film. How would you describe the pain that you go through?
It's a pain you can't describe if you've never had it. All your joints lock, so therefore it affects your movement.
So it is January at the moment and not a lot is happening, so I thought it would be a good time to give you an update. I've been drawing the mannequin for over a month now, and as you can see with my first couple attempts at it, it was quite sort of stiff and lifeless and all the proportions were off. Like, this arm here is awful. But as I started to get a bit more used to drawing each of the shapes, I moved on to drawing some actual poses. And to do that, I implemented something called a line of action, like you can see in this drawing here, which just helps the pose, it just makes it flow a little bit better and look a bit nicer. And then more recently, what I've started to do is actually draw the outline of a proper figure, moving away from that accurate mannequin appearance and towards something that does look a little bit more human. But before I move on to focusing on drawing more detailed anatomy for the body, I want to make sure that I've actually solidified my ability to shape a figure from scratch without being able to look at the mannequin as a reference for what shapes I should be using to build up the silhouette. So I'm going to try a method I've researched called reverse blocking. This is where I get a reference photo of a person, like this person here, and I break them down into the looser shapes that make up their foundations, which you can already see with this drawing here that I've started to do that. And then after that, I'm going to completely try drawing the blocking from scratch with no references at all. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on now for the next 2 to 3 weeks, although if history said anything, it might be a bit longer than that. Whilst I've got this free time, I'm going to be focusing more on nailing that blocking down and then moving on to anatomy after that. When did you first start to suffer from it, and what was like your first reactions to it?
I was on holiday at Pontins, and my right hand just went dead.
How many years ago was this?
50 years ago.
Hi, Cooper. So whilst I've got Cooper here with me, who's going a bit nuts, I thought I'd give you a quick update on my progress doing that reverse blocking technique. This here is a couple of examples of doing the base blocking underneath with the reference shapes and then drawing a bit of a better outline on top of it to make that human figure. The anatomy isn't brilliant, but that's because I haven't focused on anatomy yet. What I wanted to make sure I could do was do it with no references whatsoever. Just draw a figure without any references. And what I've managed to do here, this is one of my first drawings with no reference whatsoever. So that entire pose, all of the blocking underneath, all of the rough outlines, that's completely done just off the top of my head. And I'm quite proud of it, to be honest. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep up doing that for another few days, just doing them off the top of my head, make sure that I can nail doing that, and then I'll move on to actually making the anatomy on top of those rough figures actually look a little bit more accurate. Cooper! How did it affect your personal life at that time?
Well, having a baby, I didn't enjoy her as a child like everybody else would, because I couldn't cuddle her and do things like that and pick her up because my hands wouldn't let me. But I thought, well, she's my girl now, I love her, and so I've got to do my best for her. So that's what I did.
God, January was boring. Being out of work and struggling to find it, not being a student anymore, and just generally not leaving the house doesn't really make for good entertainment. But, ignoring that, I think I'm decent enough at drawing the rough blocking now to move on to doing the anatomy. I've got a good general idea for what shapes to use for the blocking. For example, this sort of W shape here for the ribs that I've been using, these circles for the shoulders. However, I do think I might be jumping the gun, because if you zoom out, this person has very long abs. Normally, I'd just erase this and fix it, but it's concerning that I'm not confident enough to know how far underneath this shape for the ribs, the shape for the pelvis should be. So what I think I'm going to do is focus on a body part at a time, starting with the torso. I'm going to look at really simple references and just do the blocking, with the main goal of improving the proportions of the torso. But I'm also going to draw very, very roughly the anatomy from those references on top, just so I can get an idea of what it's like before I move on to focusing on drawing the musculature in a little bit more detail. And since it's now the beginning of February, and I've got lots of spare time, I thought I'd pull up this tiny glass table and just film an example. How does it affect your current family life?
Not too bad, because they're pretty good with me. I mean, I've got 2 grandchildren.
Hello.
They've never, ever questioned my hands right from being small. They've just accepted them as they are. And that's it. They don't bother. You know, it's been quite good. And they're very good now still.
Okay, so it has been 3 days now since I drew that example, but I still want to explain what I did. So if I just get the reference photo up here, I started by drawing the W shape, and I did put a line down the middle just for the centre of the body. I looked at this area here on the reference, and I sort of tried to copy that shape best I could in an effort to improve the proportioning. Then I did the rough shape for the chest on top, and these very rough abs here. The day after that, I did this drawing, which is awful. So yesterday I got this reference image here, and I tried again. This time I really thought about the blocking in relation to the skeleton underneath this person. So I started thinking, where would the ribs be? Because this W shape here is really supposed to represent the ribs. And I realised that if I continue this W shape down and sort of connect it in this big circle here, the line actually goes right through where the belly button should be. So I'm getting a better idea at how to think about proportion in the abdomen rather than just looking how long the line should be. I'm actually thinking of it in relation to real life anatomy. Now that I sort of understand this a little bit more, I'm going to keep it up for my next few drawings and hopefully really nail down the torso, and then I might either move on to doing different angles or move on to different body parts. I haven't quite decided yet, but that's where I'm at the moment.
Oh, I think Amy once said, "Why have you got funny hands?" And I said, well, I've got what they call a complaint called rheumatoid arthritis, and it makes you've disfigured a bit. But I said, hold my hand and see what it feels like. So she held it, and she says, "Oh, that's not too bad, Nanny, is it?" I says, "No, I can hold your hand when you go out, now you see."
Oh. So today was actually pretty good. I was out at the house doing some filming for someone's showreel, and I'm just sort of happy to be out there being busy. But then I got home and I checked my emails and found out that I wasn't accepted onto this sort of this TV trainee scheme that I applied for. This is the 3rd TV opportunity where I've got to the interview stage and I've been unsuccessful, the 3rd time in the past couple of months. It's just discouraging, struggling so much to find the work that I actually want to do. It feels like since the beginning of this year, all I've been doing is applying for jobs, watching TV, trying to be more organised and going to the gym. That's all I've done. Oh, and drawing, of course. But every day just feels the same. Don't think for a second that I'm about to give up, because I'm not. In fact, here's some of those torsos that I've been drawing. These were both done with references, but this most recent one here, this one was done without any reference image at all. So I'm quite happy with my progress with that. So I think now I'm going to move on to doing some female torsos, because I've been focusing on male ones, and after that I can keep my progress going with blocking and anatomy. But yeah, it's the beginning of March now and that's where I'm at. I don't know, hopefully something more exciting will happen soon. Well, something exciting did happen last week. I went out for a night out in Manchester, which was fun. But I've just sat down to do my drawing for today. I'm on female torsos still. I think I'm about ready to move on to a bit more advanced stuff. I might follow some more anatomy tutorials, but I've realised I'm at the end of my sketchbook, which means there's only one thing for it. I've got to buy a new one.
You've got to push yourself, in a way, to do things. Because if you sat back and just being miserable, you'd be miserable all your life. So there's not much point. So you just have to learn to get on with it.
This is my second sketchbook. Okay, so here is my new sketchbook, which I have been drawing in for a few days now. By the way, did you like that shot just when I introduced it? I tried recreating the first scene that I shot for this project, which is hopefully another thing that I think you'll see throughout whatever this film ends up being. You'll see that my filmmaking skills are slowly improving. But anyway, on to drawing. I finally moved on to torso anatomy. So from the tutorials and the references that I've seen, for males, you have the chest shape here, and you have this sort of thing for the shoulders. Then you have the abs down the middle, which is kind of like a pointy triangle type shape. And then for females, it's actually pretty much the same. So you have the chest, the abs, the side muscles, except this time you have this teardrop shape for the breasts over the top. And the sides also differ because you have that more hourglass shape for the females compared to this sort of very broad shape that you have for the males. And this is my first attempt at doing angled drawings for the torso muscles. And I've used coloured pencils as well to really highlight the different muscle groups. And I'm actually starting to feel a bit more confident with doing this. So my sort of next steps, I'm going to keep on drawing torsos at different angles, make sure I can do sort of the sides, the front, and I might look at the back as well. But I'm also going to start now adding in the shoulders and the arms so I can really start to nail the entire upper body. In terms of where I am at in sort of time, I guess, it's the end of March. Back to work. Got stuff coming up in the summer. So things are definitely looking up. Hello, and welcome back to Depressing Chats in My Car. It's April, and things were looking up. Unlike the beginning of this year, I'm finally busy. Not only have I had a couple TV jobs, and I've got some TV work lined up for this summer, but I've also been networking and meeting new people and going out of the house. But then something bad happened. Do you remember one of my goals? To be skilled enough to properly draw illustrations for my nan's documentary, because I could never film proper B-roll for it as she's now in a care home. Well, last week at pretty much midnight, I got a call. She died last week. And whilst we all knew it was coming, and because of that I'm not as sad or depressed as I could have been, it's still really, really shit. And I'm more just pissed off that I didn't get the time to interact with her properly. Because, I mean, the last time I saw her before her being unwell or dealing with lockdowns and social distancing and all that was right before COVID kicked off. So that's over 2 years ago. Everything could have been so much better. I guess I just have to keep going so that one day I'll be good enough to finish what I started and tell her story. Because I will tell it. One day. I swear. Sun's currently setting. I don't want it to. No matter how good or bad things get, I'm not giving up.